Eat marshmallow pie.
Okay, what's this? Am I on drugs? Okay, whatever. Stop it. This clip was not made with the typical animation process, but rather with a technique called rotoscoping. In this video, I will explain how it works and how it has impacted film and animation over the decades.
Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy.
So, what is rotoscoping? In a few words, it's animation with extra steps. When you're animating an object, you draw several pictures of it, each in a slightly different position, and when played back, it creates an illusion of movement. Rotoscoping is the same, but you make your drawings by tracing over live-action film footage. This produces an animation with realistic movement, or rather, movement that feels realistic. Of course, when tracing the subject over your footage, you don't have to copy their form identically. You can make changes to their face, make the legs longer, swap their clothes, etc. The key is to capture the original movement. The inventor of rotoscoping was Max Fleischer, the founder of Fleischer Studios. They were an animation production house during the early 20th century and created some famous cartoon characters such as Betty Boop. They were also the rival of Walt Disney and his own studio, a rivalry that led them to compete over who could make better films. Max Fleischer patented his rotoscoping machine in 1917, and it was simply called the rotoscope. It consisted of a big projector that showed the live-action footage on a transparent drawing board where the animator would trace the footage and produce a frame. Rinse and repeat, you get an animation. The first cartoon in which Max Fleischer allegedly used the rotoscope is Out of the Inkwell, a sketch about a cartoon clown fighting a real fly. Rotoscoping would be used in several other Fleischer cartoons, not just because of its lifelike motion, but also to speed up the production process and save costs. Some of these cartoons include Minnie the Moocher and their own version of Snow White.
Find another sweet man like me. Now when I die, bear me in my straight leg breeches.
While rotoscoping began as a technique at Fleischer's animation studio, it would also be used by Walt Disney Studios in their own work. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Disney's first animation feature, has several rotoscoped segments, including one of Snow White dancing, where they brought a dancer into the studio for the reference footage. In addition, Prince Charming and Wicked Queen were also rotoscoped for the most part. While this animation today looks naturalistic to us, viewers in 1937 complained that the rotoscoped characters were uncanny, and some even disagreed on whether they were real actors or just cartoons. In spite of this, Disney reused rotoscoping several times throughout the 1940s and 50s, in titles such as Cinderella and Alice in Wonderland. Now, while rotoscoping in Fleischer cartoons and Disney films had aimed at creating realistic movement,
Well, I've had enough nonsense.
its potential for unconventional styles was also explored, especially in adult animation films. For instance, the clip from the beginning of this video belongs to the film Yellow Submarine, an adaptation of the Beatles' music that emulated the psychedelic aesthetic of the 1960s. Basically, what would an animator draw if they were super high? Then, one of the major users of rotoscoping in adult animation films is Ralph Bakshi, who used the technique extensively throughout his career, in films like Wizards, Lord of the Rings, and American Pop. Bakshi's case is very notorious, since he shot an entire live-action movie as a reference before creating the animated version through rotoscoping. This is a contrast to Disney, who used rotoscoping partially without relying on it entirely. For this reason, Bakshi's films have a very, particular aesthetic. They create this uncanny feeling of not being able to distinguish between real movement and pure animation. Nowadays, rotoscoping can still be seen in media, but not very often. There are a few examples, like Richard Linklater's films, a couple of TV shows, and some anime films, but overall, the technology has remained a niche visual style. This is not to say that the legacy of rotoscoping has been forgotten, far from it. In fact, it is the basis of a technology that is now standard in audiovisual media: motion capture. Much like rotoscoping, motion capture captures the movement of live-action actors by registering keyframes into a computer, which is then used to create CGI characters. You have seen motion capture countless times. Gollum in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, Thanos from the Avengers, and the main characters in many video games, like The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption, or Uncharted. In conclusion, rotoscoping is an important part of film history that started with a humble invention of an animator, but which then grew to fit into all styles of storytelling and building the foundations of some of the most common practices in the industry. Thanks for watching!